in the Book of Enoch. Enoch chapter 15, verse 4 describes the details of the reason the fallen angels will all end up in the lake of fire.
What if one of the oldest religious books ever written described hell in ways most people have never heard? The Book of Enoch paints a frightening picture of judgment, punishment, and the sins that lead people to eternal consequences. Although it is not part of most Bibles, it deeply influenced early Jewish and Christian thought and is even mentioned in the New Testament. So what does it actually say about hell, and which sins does it warn about the most? Join us in this video as we uncover its shocking revelations. Today, the first vision of hell was never about ordinary people. When most people think about the Book of Enoch, they picture a terrifying vision of hell filled with endless fire. Many assume it describes the final destination of sinful people. But when we actually read the text, we discover something very different. One of the book's most famous descriptions of a fiery pit is not mainly about ordinary human beings. Instead, it is a place prepared for rebellious spiritual beings who defied God. In chapter 54, Enoch describes an astonishing vision. He says he looked across the earth and saw a deep valley burning with fire. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Into this blazing valley came kings and powerful rulers, and they were thrown into its depths. But another detail immediately stands out. Enoch notices enormous iron chains being made. These are not ordinary chains. They are massive iron fetters prepared for prisoners whose punishment has already been decided. Curious, Enoch turns to the angel of peace traveling beside him and asks an important question. Who are these chains for? The angel's answer changes the entire meaning of the vision. He explains that these chains are being prepared for the armies of Azazel. According to the Book of Enoch, Azazel was one of the rebellious watchers, the angels who abandoned their place in heaven, descended to earth, and corrupted humanity. These fallen angels taught forbidden knowledge, encouraged violence, spread wickedness, and helped fill the earth with sin. Their judgment, the angel says, has already been determined. The armies of Azazel will be captured, bound in those heavy chains, and thrown into what the text calls the abyss of complete condemnation. On the great day of judgment, 4 of God's highest angels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Phanuel, will personally seize them and cast them into a burning furnace of fire. The punishment is described as God's response to their oppressive deeds and to the way they led the people of the earth away from Him. This detail is often overlooked. Although Enoch sees kings and rulers connected to this scene, the passage places its main focus on Azazel and his followers. The fiery abyss is first introduced as a place prepared for these rebellious angels, not as a general description of where every sinful person goes after death. That distinction matters because it changes how we understand one of the Book of Enoch's most famous images. What makes this passage even more fascinating is how closely it resembles language found in the New Testament. In 2 Peter 2, we read these striking words, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment on the day of judgment." Notice the similarities: sinning angels, chains, waiting for judgment, divine punishment that has not yet reached its final stage. These ideas appear together in both writings. This raises an important question. Where did the author of 2 Peter get this imagery? The Old Testament never tells a detailed story about sinful angels being bound in chains and held for a future judgment. Jesus also never describes this specific picture in the Gospels. Because of that, many scholars believe the author of 2 Peter was drawing from ideas already found in the Book of Enoch, a work that was widely known among many Jews during the Second Temple period. There is another fascinating connection. The word translated as hell in 2 Peter is not the familiar Greek words Hades or Gehenna. Instead, the author uses the rare word Tartarus, a term that appears nowhere else in the Bible. The same concept also appears in the Book of Enoch, where imprisoned angels are kept in a place of deep darkness, awaiting God's final judgment. This does not necessarily mean 2 Peter declares the Book of Enoch to be inspired scripture, but it does show that its imagery and language were familiar enough to be used by New Testament writers when speaking about the punishment of rebellious angels. That leads to another surprising observation. In these passages, the focus is not on ordinary sinners suffering forever in a fiery hell. Instead, the emphasis is on fallen angels who rebelled against God and now await the final day of judgment. The fire is connected to divine justice against supernatural rebellion before it becomes a picture of human punishment. This is one reason the Book of Enoch has fascinated readers for centuries. Many people assume it simply describes hell as later Christian tradition imagined it. But when we read the text carefully, its earliest and most dramatic vision of fiery judgment is aimed first at Azazel and the fallen watchers who corrupted the world. As we continue, an even bigger question remains. If this famous passage is really about rebellious angels, then what does the Book of Enoch actually say about human beings? Which sins does it claim bring God's judgment? And how do those warnings compare with what we read elsewhere in the Bible? Those answers reveal an even more surprising picture. Before we go further, let us get to understand what the Book of Enoch really is. What is the Book of Enoch, and why does it matter? Before we can understand what the Book of Enoch says about hell, judgment, and sin, we first need to answer a simple question. What exactly is this mysterious book? The Book of Enoch is one of the oldest and most fascinating religious writings ever discovered. Ancient tradition says it was written by Enoch, the man described in Genesis as the father of Methuselah, the great-grandfather of Noah, and the man who walked with God. Because of that connection, many people assumed Enoch himself wrote the book. However, most modern scholars believe it was written much later by several Jewish authors over a long period of time. The oldest parts of what we now call First Enoch were likely written between 300 and 200 BC, while one of its latest sections, known as the Book of Parables, was probably completed around 100 BC. Instead of being a single book written at one moment, it is a collection of writings put together across generations. Traditionally, 3 different books are linked to Enoch: First Enoch, Second Enoch, and Third Enoch. They are separate works written in different periods, but First Enoch is by far the most famous. It contains the stories that have captured people's imagination for centuries, including the fall of the Watchers, the origins of demons, and the Nephilim, the reason God sent the flood in Noah's time, visions of heaven and judgment, and prophecies about the coming Messiah and his future kingdom. These are subjects that the Bible often mentions only briefly. The Book of Enoch expands them with dramatic visions and detailed stories, which is one reason it continues to attract so much attention today. But despite its popularity, the Book of Enoch is not considered scripture by most Jews or most Christian churches. It is not part of the biblical canon used by the vast majority of Christians around the world. There are important exceptions, however. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church, and the Ethiopian Jewish community known as Beta Israel have preserved First Enoch as part of their biblical canon for centuries. That makes the Book of Enoch unique. It is rejected as scripture by most traditions, yet accepted as inspired by others. Few ancient religious books have had such an unusual history. Another remarkable fact is that the original version of the book has been lost. Scholars believe it was first written in either Aramaic, Hebrew, or perhaps both, since those were the main languages used by Jewish writers during that period. While no complete Hebrew copy has survived, ancient Aramaic fragments of First Enoch were discovered among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves. Those discoveries confirmed that the book was already circulating centuries before the time of Jesus. The only complete version of First Enoch that survives today is written in Ge'ez, the ancient language of Ethiopia. Without the careful preservation of Ethiopian Christians, much of this remarkable book might have been lost forever. Perhaps the most surprising part of its story is its connection to the New Testament itself. Although most Christians do not consider the Book of Enoch to be inspired scripture, there is strong evidence that some New Testament writers knew it well. The clearest example appears in the Epistle of Jude. In Jude 14 and 15, the author directly quotes a prophecy and attributes it to Enoch, the seventh from Adam. The quotation closely matches a passage found in 1st Enoch, making it one of the most direct links between this ancient book and the New Testament. This does not automatically mean the entire Book of Enoch was accepted as scripture by the apostles. New Testament writers sometimes quoted sources that were familiar to their audiences without declaring every part of those writings to be divinely inspired. Still, the quotation shows that the Book of Enoch was respected, widely known, and influential among many Jewish communities during the time of Jesus and the early church. Understanding that background is important because it helps explain why the Book of Enoch has never completely disappeared. For over 2,000 years, it has sparked debate, inspired curiosity, and shaped conversations about angels, demons, judgment, and the unseen world. To some, it is an ancient historical treasure. To others, it is a valuable window into Jewish thought before the New Testament. But what other secrets hide inside Enoch's visions beyond our world today? Keep watching to find out the hidden worlds inside the Book of Enoch's ancient visions. The Book of Enoch is often remembered for its visions of angels, judgment, and the mysteries of heaven. But hidden inside its pages are descriptions that go far beyond what many people expect. Some of its most unusual passages speak about the structure of the heavens, the movement of celestial bodies, and worlds that seem far larger than the one we know. These ideas are found mainly in two sections of 1st Enoch, the astronomical book covering chapters 72 through 82, and the Book of Parables found in chapters 37 through 71. Unlike many ancient writings that exist only through much later copies, these sections are supported by some of the oldest manuscripts ever discovered. Among the most important pieces of evidence are the Aramaic fragments known as 4Q209 and 4Q211, discovered in Cave 4 among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. These fragments date back roughly to between 200 and 100 BC, centuries before the rise of Christianity and older than the New Testament writings. Their discovery changed the way scholars viewed the Book of Enoch. These were not medieval additions or ideas created long after the original text disappeared. They were ancient copies showing that these mysterious visions were already circulating in Jewish communities more than 2,000 years ago. Scholar Joseph Milik, who spent decades studying the Dead Sea Scroll fragments, identified these astronomical sections as some of the most technically detailed writings from the ancient world. What stood out to him was the precision of the descriptions. The numbers, cycles, and patterns found in these passages appear carefully arranged rather than randomly created. Other researchers, including Florentino Garcia Martinez, reached similar conclusions while studying the Qumran manuscripts. They argued that these sections were not simply poetic descriptions of the sky. Instead, they contained structured explanations of movements, cycles, and measurements. The language often sounds less like a religious poem and more like someone carefully recording observations. One fragment, 4Q211, describes celestial movements through fixed intervals and repeating patterns. Whether ancient readers understood these descriptions the same way modern readers do is debated, but one thing is clear: the author was presenting a highly organized vision of the universe. What makes this even more fascinating is that the Book of Enoch survived through different manuscript traditions. The Ethiopian Ge'ez version, Greek fragments discovered in Egypt, and the Aramaic Dead Sea Scroll fragments all preserve parts of the same ancient work. These copies were separated by geography, language, and time, yet many of the core ideas remained remarkably consistent. For historians, this kind of agreement is important because it helps show that these passages were not simply created by later editors. Instead, they represent ideas that were already present in ancient Jewish thought. But the Book of Enoch does not only describe the skies above the earth, it also presents a vision of a universe filled with different levels and realms. In chapter 40 of the Book of Parables, Enoch describes being taken beyond the earth and placed in a position where he can witness heavenly realities. Some scholars interpret this passage as describing a layered universe, where different heavens contain different beings and forms of creation. George Nicholsberg, one of the most respected scholars of Enoch literature, explained that these passages describe more than a single heavenly location. They present a structured cosmos with different levels, each having its own purpose and inhabitants. That detail is important because the text does not simply describe angels moving between heaven and earth. It describes beings that appear to belong to these different realms. In other words, the difference is between a visitor and a resident. A messenger travels somewhere to deliver a message, but a resident belongs to the place where they exist. This idea reveals how unusual the worldview of Enoch really was. It presented a universe far more complex than the simple picture many ancient people imagined. The heavens were not empty spaces above the earth. They were places filled with order, life, and divine activity. In chapter 60, Enoch also describes a mysterious location called the Place of the Luminaries. According to scholars who have studied the Ethiopian version of the text, the word used for these beings carries a meaning different from ordinary stars or angels. It presents them as sources of light rather than objects that simply reflect light. For ancient readers, this was a powerful image. Enoch was not only describing a spiritual experience, he was presenting a vision of a universe filled with things beyond human understanding. Whether these passages are interpreted as symbolic visions, ancient cosmology, or something more mysterious, they reveal why the Book of Enoch has remained such a controversial and fascinating text. It was not only concerned with sin and punishment, it also explored questions about creation, the heavens, and the hidden realities beyond human sight. And this becomes important when studying its ideas about judgment. Because before Enoch describes where sinners are punished, it first builds a picture of a universe where unseen realms exist, powerful beings can rebel, and every action has consequences that reach far beyond the human world. What other mysterious places did Enoch discover beyond the heavens? Let's find out. The strange regions beyond Earth described in Enoch's vision. The Book of Enoch does not only describe angels, judgment, and heavenly realms. Some of its passages present something far more detailed. Scholar Torleif Elgvin, who studied Enoch fragments at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, pointed to one unusual feature of the text. He argued that some of the language used in the Ethiopian Ge'ez version suggests a unique way of describing these beings and places, unlike anything found in other ancient Jewish writings. One of the most interesting examples appears in chapter 77. According to translator Michael Knibb, the passage reads almost like a survey of different regions beyond Earth. Instead of describing heaven as one general spiritual location, Enoch presents a structured universe with separate areas. The text mentions 4 major regions connected to different features of creation. The northern region is associated with a place of cold and a mysterious substance described as the stone of cold. The eastern region is connected with the source of the waters above. The western region contains the place where the great lights set, using language that appears more specific than simple poetic imagery. The southern region describes a place of powerful winds inhabited by beings connected to that environment. This creates a picture of a universe that is carefully organized. Each area has its own conditions, its own purpose, and its own inhabitants. Rather than simply saying that heaven exists somewhere above, Enoch describes different zones within creation. Another unusual section appears in chapter 43, where Enoch is shown what the text calls the names of the lights. These are not just random stars. Each one is connected with a specific identity, role, and function. Scholar James van der Kam has noted that the naming system in this chapter follows a clear pattern. The names appear to represent purpose, origin, and authority. While he does not claim these were physical worlds, he argues that the system is too organized to be meaningless decoration. The Aramaic fragments also reveal something interesting. Emil Puech observed that some of the language used for these names does not appear in other known Jewish writings. The terminology seems unique to Enoch itself, suggesting that the author created a special vocabulary to describe these visions. Whether readers interpret these passages as symbolic, theological, or something more mysterious, one thing is clear. The Book of Enoch presents a highly detailed vision of creation. It describes a universe filled with order, structure, and hidden realities beyond human sight. And this matters because Enoch's ideas about the unseen world are directly connected to its teachings about judgment. Before revealing where punishment happens, the book first builds a picture of a universe where every realm, every being, and every action exists under a greater divine order. So what do you think about the Book of Enoch's revelation about hell? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, the Book of Enoch reveals a mysterious world of angels, judgment, hidden realms, and ancient beliefs that continue to spark debate today. Like, subscribe, and join us for more untold stories.